Alright, Smiles from 600miles.com. I sold my little blue coupe, and the brake fluid seems to be disappearing, and usually when it does, it's leaking into the brake booster there. So I'm going to show you how to do a quick test on it to see if the brake fluid's going into the booster. First thing you want to do is disconnect the two bolts that hold the brake booster to the body. There's one over here. And there's one right here. And then what you want to do is pull it away from the, there's a holder in back here in the back of the booster that plugs into part of the body here. So all you got to do is lift it up and shake it. And if you can hear fluid in it, you know the brake booster's leaking past the seal here, and it's going into the brake booster canister, and I can hear it sloshing around in there. So now I'm going to take apart the 3 brake lines and take it off the car. So what you want to do is get one of these flare nut wrench, the 10 flare nut wrench, and it's the one with the notch cut out, and it's a little bit thicker than a regular wrench. So you want to take it off with this because it won't destroy the brake line. That's one. There's one on each side, so each one has to go to the front. So one brake line goes to the left front, and one brake line goes to the right front, and then the one over here on the front is the one that goes from the master cylinder into the brake booster. And then when you got them loose, you can use a regular wrench. You don't screw them if you can't get them with your fingers. They're usually pretty corroded, so you just loosen them, do that. And you'll also want to take out the there's a 10 or a flat blade. Take this off. So you can take the lead vacuum line attached to the car, and you want to loosen that and then pry this off with a screwdriver or some suitable tool like that wrench. And then if you got good paint, you'll want to put a rag down there because all the brake fluid is going to leak out of these hoses here. It will eat your paint. So this is how easy it is to take the brake booster off. I don't think I've done a tear down of a brake booster before, but the first thing you'll want to do is take off the bracket on the bottom. So you need a 10mm box or impact. Take those out, and then there's a 14. There's a 12. There's a 12 here on the front. 12 box. You don't have to unscrew it all the way because it's open on one side. So just do that, and then take out the 6 by 10mm head bolt. And it's got a split lock washer that's built onto the bolt, and then it's got a flat washer. It's separate. So there's 2 flat washers and 2 bolts with captured washers. Take those off. Take the bracket off. I'm doing this on top of my sink right now because my workbench is full of an engine. So Mr. Bean, still working on that. All right, this is the breather cap. Then you need snap ring pliers. So universal snap ring pliers has take the snap ring out of the top. Snap ring, a perforated washer, a spring, and then underneath that there's a piece of brass with a piece of rubber on one side. That's the valve there for the intake. Then this is a 7mm, And before you unscrew it, what you want to do is tighten it. Tighten it and then unscrew it. That's one. That's two. And these holes go all the way through, so you can actually soak them in penetrating oil if you can't get them to start. You can see the fluid dripping out of here is not supposed to be any fluid. It's dripping through the system there. Oops, that one seems like it's going to break off, or I've already loosened it. Must be that I've already loosened it. I don't remember doing that one. All right. To 7. You probably clean and reuse all your old bolts, unless you have some that have been zinc plated. All you gotta do is lift this piece off. It comes off with the hose up here. There's a spring in there. This piece is off. Take that out if you're gonna sandblast this thing, because you don't want to sandblast the zinc unless you're gonna repaint the whole thing, and it's probably gonna matter. And underneath here, there's not supposed to be any fluid in here either. There's a junction hose here. There's 2 of these. There's one smaller, one bigger. You can reuse these. They're vacuum tubes, or you can get new hose and put in there. And while it's still together, I like to take out the other fittings, because you get a little more leverage. Unless you gotta put it in a vise and do it, but this is a 12. It's only on the coupe. On the coupe's got this vacuum hose on this side. On the sedan, it's got the vacuum hose on the other side. And this is a common similar booster to the one that's on the late model sedan. So if it had one line out instead of 2 lines out, it would be a sedan body. That'd be the way to tell. If this won't just peel out, you want to get a screwdriver or a tool like this, maybe, and carefully pry down into there. This is a rubber diaphragm. You're going to see it's all going to be white and corroded in here. I probably won't use this diaphragm again. I've got a bunch of them that are in better shape. So there's a diaphragm there, then there's a plastic piston, then there's another circlip there. Take those out. So I think what I want to do first, though, is take the canister off so I don't keep dumping fluid all over the place. So that's an 8. Or a 5/16. Alright, so then we're going to take the 8mm, remove all these nuts. You probably snap the bolt, probably snap them off some on some of them, because they're going to, especially the ones at the bottom. Sometimes you got to hold the, it's not a bolt on the other side, it's a round bolt with a notch in it, so it doesn't have any way to grip it, except maybe vice grips. Alright, so what I want to do now is I got that last bolt out, but I had to cut it off with a hacksaw. It was a real pain. So now what you do is split the steel from the aluminum, and normally you get a flat blade screwdriver or a sharp screwdriver. You pound it in between the two. Look around the edge and see if there's some place like this one that's starting to lift. So I got a little lift on it right there. I'm going to have it sitting this way because it's got all the fluid in it, and pry it open. If you're lucky, the diaphragm is still the original shape and hasn't changed. So there's a spring in here. Then you want to get rid of the brake fluid. Don't dump it in your sink. I'll probably dump it in with your waste motor oil. Alright, I dumped that in with my waste oil. It's a 10 in the center of the rubber, holding it to the piston. I'm going to take that off. You see that it's disconnected. Even though this was got fluid in and all that, and the vacuum piston's just disconnected, it was still working good. You just couldn't tell. I'm going to do this with a 10 because, let's see here. Spinning around in circles, so it's being a pain. There's a nut, split lock, and a flat washer, and then there's an O-ring underneath that. It's a 6mm O-ring. That one that is distorted. Bill Colford just started making them, but I still got about 12 of them that are in good shape, so I'm going to keep using mine. So you can see all this in here, it's all corroded brake fluid. See if I can get that 10 out of there. Over at my vise. Alright, look at my vise, I unscrewed this one. It's 14 open end wrench. One at the bottom, 14, and you can use a box wrench or an impact if you got it. And the washer under here is a flat washer. It's a special washer. It's slightly thinner than a regular 8mm washer, and it's slightly smaller OD than a regular 8mm washer. And inside of here, there's another O-ring. Dig that out. There's also another O-ring in here. This is a 10 on the side. I don't know why this is here. They didn't need to put it in. It doesn't do anything unless there's some other purpose for it on a different model. And it's a 6x1, and it's about 10mm long, and it's got a crush washer underneath it. It's a 6mm by 12mm, and it's 2mm thick. But since it doesn't do anything, you could use one that's probably 1mm thick, would be fine. And when you take this apart, you want to look at the piston, see if it's got any copper showing. This one looks pretty good. I'll probably reuse this one. Otherwise, I had a bunch of them re-chrome plated because they're hard chrome plated in the factory. So knock this apart, and be careful when you're, and don't lose this little rod here. This is the push rod, and it pushes on. There's a ball bearing and a spring inside of here. And this is a 12 by 22mm seal for the back, and I call this a crown. Looks like a little crown. And then there's a snap ring here. You take that off, and then take off the push this pin out. And when you push the pin out, that's about, I'm going to say 1/8 inch because I don't know what the metric size would be. So here's the end of the push rod. There's a little spring here, and there's a ball bearing beyond that. You peel the seals off if you're going to try to reuse them. don't destroy them. And this one goes on backwards. This one goes on pointed that way. This one goes on pointing that way. I got new seals. I got them from a company that rebuilds brake boosters in trade for some parts that they needed. So I got 10 sets of seals. And no, I don't sell the seals. I'm sure once I need more, I'll have to figure out somewhere to get them, but I don't sell them. So this one you want to look at too, make sure the chrome's not worn down to the copper. This one looks pretty good. So I'm thinking the guy that had this car before me was David Barry. He lived up in Portland. And he built this car. He didn't put many miles on it, and they showed it. And then he passed away, and I bought it from a guy in Eugene. And went back to my vise, unscrewed this thing. And then there's a snap ring in here. Take that one out. And 99% of the time when your brakes get jammed up and locked up and they won't release, it's because of the little piston inside of here. It's aluminum on aluminum. There. Alright, little snap ring. Then there's a little washer. It's a special washer, it only goes here. It's about 12 or 13 millimeters with a 6 millimeter hole in the middle. Then right in the center here is the other piston. And you got to get that out of there. Oh, there it goes. Got lucky on that one. And then I'm amazed that this rubber band that they put on all these cars 4,000 years ago are still in good shape. But I don't put them back on. Alright, so there it is. The empty brake booster body from a Honda 600 coupe. So I'm going to clean all the pieces up and we'll come back and put it back together. This one's no good. It's got too much corrosion in it. It's this piece here. Top of the, where the air filter goes on, clips onto that groove right there. But this one's pretty corroded in there. I don't think that rubber seat's going to work too well. So I got more of these things. I'll just put another one on. And I got most of the booster back together. I'm working on the diaphragm right now, and what I like to do is put 2 coats of weldwood contact cement, let one dry, and then put the other one on. And while it's still tacky, you glue it to the other side. And this has also got 2 coats on it. So I use weldwood contact cement. That's what I've always used. Never had a problem. And then I made this jig over here, clamping thing. I'll show you how that is when I put it on. Alright, here it is on. Goes on the back side. Clamps down, pressure down toward the piston. And then it squeezes the round part on the back of the piston. So I'm going to let that sit overnight and then I put it together in the morning. So here's the diaphragm all glued together and installed. So when you're putting this back together, don't forget to put this big spring back in before you put the cover on, because otherwise it may not work.